The heart has always known restlessness. From the beginning of time, man has carried within himself a hunger that no feast can satisfy, a thirst that no stream can quench, a silence that no chorus of voices can fill. It is the ache of eternity pressing against the fragile walls of flesh. Augustine once confessed, "Our hearts are restless until they rest in you," and every generation since has discovered the same truth in its own tongue, that the soul, when stripped of all its distractions, longs for nothing less than the infinite. And yet, how many wander the earth without knowing why their soul trembles in the night? How many pursue gold and applause? How many build towers to their own name, only to find themselves emptier at the summit than when they began? For the human soul is fashioned for eternity, and all else, pleasure, praise, power, slips through the fingers like sand. The banquet of the world always ends in hunger, but there is a deeper path, not outward, but inward, not toward possession, but toward surrender. The mystics of the ages whispered it in cloisters and deserts, in cellars and mountains, that to know God is not first to see with the eyes, but to be seen by the eternal gaze, not first to speak, but to fall silent until one hears the word that spoke the world into being. Meister Eckhart declared that the eye with which I see God is the same eye with which God sees me, for there is no distance in true union. The soul's journey begins in darkness. Dante, lost in a shadowed wood, knew that every pilgrim begins with confusion, that before the ascent to paradise there must be the descent into self. To look upon one's own poverty is to tremble. Pride resists it, the ego shouts against it, but truth requires it. The beginning of wisdom is to know the heart's exile. Kierkegaard named it despair, the sickness unto death, that gnaws at every human being who refuses to ground their existence in God. And so long as we run from this confrontation, we wander endlessly, like travelers circling the same barren desert. But the dark night of the soul is not punishment, it is purification. Teresa of Avila walked through the silence of God and found in it not rejection, but an invitation into a love deeper than words. When the soul feels abandoned, it is only being emptied of its idols. When prayers echo without reply, it is because the eternal is teaching the soul to wait with naked faith, to desire not gifts, but the giver himself. The silence of God is never the absence of God. It is his most hidden presence, pressing the soul to shed its veils until nothing remains but truth. And truth humbles. What is man before the infinite? Dust and breath. And yet, this is the wonder, the dust is beloved. The infinite bends low to the finite. The Creator stoops to embrace the creature. Pascal, torn between grandeur and misery, saw that only in God are both reconciled. We are wretched without him, glorious within him. Thus humility is not humiliation, but liberation, the freeing of the soul from illusions of self-sufficiency. To bow low is to be lifted higher than pride could ever reach. But to walk this path requires courage, for the world mocks silence and exalts noise. It rewards those who shout, who grasp, who build kingdoms of their own will. Yet silence remains the language of the soul. In silence, the soul sheds its armor. In silence, it discovers that beneath all striving lies a deeper current. The cloud of unknowing, that ancient anonymous guide, taught that one must pierce the cloud of forgetting with a dart of love. Not by reasoning, not by calculation, but by surrender, an abandonment into the mystery beyond thought. For God is not an object to be grasped, but a presence to be received, and the heart receives him not by conquest, but by yielding. To surrender is not to lose, but to finally find. The hand that lets go discovers it was never empty. The heart that yields learns it was always being held. Divine love does not crush, but completes. It does not erase the soul, but awakens it into its true likeness. Augustine found that the God he resisted was closer to him than his own breath, more intimate than his own thoughts. Love had been pursuing him even as he fled, waiting at the threshold of his freedom, never forcing, always inviting. And when at last he yielded, he discovered not a tyrant but a father, not chains but wings. This is the ascent of the soul, not a climbing upward by human strength, but a being drawn upward by divine love. Dante's guide could only lead him so far. Beyond a certain point, only love could carry him into the light. So it is with us. Reason can open the gate, but love leads us through. The intellect bows before the mystery it cannot contain, and the heart, purified of lesser desires, rises toward the one it was made for. Every step upward is grace, and yet every step requires consent. God will not drag the soul, for love cannot compel. The Eternal chooses only those who choose Him. Gratitude, then, becomes the soul's native tongue. To awaken is to see that every breath is a gift, every dawn a mercy, every trial a teacher, every silence an invitation. The mystics sang their gratitude not only in joy, but in suffering, for they saw that even the wounds of life could be transfigured into gateways of grace. To give thanks is to see the world with transfigured eyes, to glimpse eternity shimmering through the fragile veil of time. And what is eternity, if not the fulfillment of this restless longing? Not endless days repeating, but the fullness of being beyond all decay. The eternal is not far away. It breaks into time like a hidden flame, glimpsed in moments of stillness, in sudden beauty, in the quiet certainty of being loved. To awaken is not to escape the world, but to see it illuminated from within by the light of the one who holds it all. Thus the soul learns that no step toward God is ever wasted, no prayer falls unheard, no tear is unseen, no man is lost who seeks the face of God, for to seek Him is already to be found by Him. The very hunger in the heart is evidence of His presence, the longing itself is His call, and the day will come when longing gives way to vision, when the soul, purified by the journey, shall see not through shadows, but face to face. The path of the soul is not straight, nor is it smooth. It bends through valleys, it ascends jagged cliffs, it descends into caverns where light seems absent, yet every turn, however bitter, conceals a hidden mercy. The ancients knew that the way to God is not flight from suffering, but transformation of it. The cross was never meant to be avoided. It was meant to be carried, and in its weight the soul learns the secret of love. For love that costs nothing is an illusion, but love that endures through fire becomes eternal. To stand before the mystery of suffering is to stand at the edge of eternity. Why does the heart bleed? Why does the innocent weep? Augustine himself wrestled with this abyss, confessing that only in the wounds of Christ did he find solace. The mystery is not solved by answers but by presence. A God who does not remain distant but enters into the agony of His creation. When one realizes this, the night changes. Suffering does not disappear, but it glows faintly with the presence of one who has walked the same road. Even despair, when surrendered, becomes a doorway through which divine love enters more deeply. Kierkegaard spoke of the leap of faith, not as a reckless plunge into absurdity, but as the only true response of the finite to the infinite. Reason brings us to the threshold, but only faith can step across. For the mind can weigh arguments and assemble proofs, but the soul must ultimately choose. Will it cling to control, or will it entrust itself into the abyss of God's embrace? To leap is to admit that life cannot be contained by calculations, that the deepest truths cannot be dissected by the scalpel of logic. It is to abandon oneself, trembling yet trusting, into the arms of the eternal. And in that surrender, the soul begins to glimpse eternity. Eternity is not mere unending duration. It is the still point in which time itself finds its meaning. The mystics compared it to fire, burning yet unconsumed, light without shadow, fullness without end. To taste eternity is to taste the uncreated light that shone before the foundations of the world, the light that Dante beheld in his final vision, a light in which every longing found its home. Eternity is not later, it is now, hidden beneath the surface of each moment, awaiting the eyes that have been purified by love. But who among us dares to see? Most souls are content with shadows. They cling to idols of comfort, prestige, and control, fearful of what true vision might demand. Pascal warned that men distract themselves endlessly, rushing from pleasure to pleasure, because they cannot bear the silence in which eternity speaks. They drown themselves in noise to avoid hearing the whisper of their own mortality. Yet to flee from silence is to flee from the very ground of existence. Only in silence does the eternal voice resound. The dark night strips away the false lights, leaving the soul naked before its maker. And though this nakedness terrifies, it is the beginning of true freedom. For in losing the world's illusions, the soul finds the one reality that cannot be shaken. In the stillness beyond all images, beyond all words, beyond all understanding, the soul learns to rest in pure being. Meister Eckhart spoke of the birth of God in the soul, a birth that occurs only when the soul ceases to cling to anything that is not God. In this birth, eternity pierces time, and the soul becomes luminous with a light not its own. Gratitude wells up naturally in such a soul, not as a forced duty, but as a spontaneous overflow. To breathe becomes a hymn. To walk becomes a prayer. To suffer becomes a hidden communion. Gratitude opens the eyes to the divine hidden in all things, even in the smallest and most ordinary. Teresa of Avila could see the presence of God in the kitchen as surely as in the chapel, because she had learned that eternity dwells in the present moment. To awaken to this is to discover that heaven is not only a distant promise, but a reality already pressing itself into the texture of daily life. And yet, the ascent does not end in gratitude alone. The soul, once touched by divine love, cannot remain content with glimpses. It longs for union. It is drawn upward as flame leaps toward flame. Love, once awakened, consumes all lesser loves. The heart that has tasted the infinite finds no rest in the finite, and so the journey intensifies, not toward annihilation of self, but toward transformation into love. For God does not erase what He creates, He perfects it. The acorn does not cease to exist when it becomes the oak, it fulfills its purpose. So too, the soul does not dissolve into God like a drop into the ocean, but is lifted into its true likeness, radiant with His light, alive with His breath. This is why no man is lost who seeks the face of God. For the very act of seeking is itself a participation in His grace. The longing of the soul is already His gift. The hunger itself is the evidence of His presence. Even when we stumble, even when we wander far, the seeking heart is already held. Augustine, after years of wandering, realized that he had never been outside of God's gaze. Every restless night, every misguided pursuit, every broken prayer had been gathered by the one who loved him before he loved at all. And so the pilgrim presses on, sustained not by his own strength but by the mercy that never lets him go. Faith teaches him to see beyond appearances. Where others see chance, he sees providence. Where others see chaos, he perceives hidden order. Where others see death,
he beholds the threshold of life. To walk in faith is to live already in eternity, for faith draws tomorrow into today, unseen into seen, promised into present. At last the soul begins to glimpse its true homeland, not the fleeting kingdoms of men, but the city whose builder is God. Dante named it paradise. Augustine called it the city of God. It is the place where longing ceases because love is complete, where the restless heart finally rests, where every tear is wiped away. Yet, even as the soul yearns for this homeland, it discovers that it is already journeying within it. For the kingdom of God is within you, said the Lord, and eternity is not only the end but the hidden root of the present. No man is lost who seeks the face of God, for even the seeking is the beginning of finding. To knock is already to stand at the door. To thirst is already to taste the living water. The soul that has surrendered learns the paradox of love, that to lose oneself is to be found, that to die is to live, that to descend is to ascend. This is the mystery written into creation itself. The seed must fall into the ground and die, or it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. The mystics knew this secret, that every surrender becomes a doorway, every loss becomes an opening, every death conceals a resurrection. For the eternal never wastes what is offered. Every tear poured out in faith is gathered into the chalice of heaven. Union with God is not achieved by force, nor by striving, nor by climbing some ladder of perfection. It is the slow unveiling of what has always been true, that God is nearer to us than we are to ourselves. Augustine trembled when he discovered this. He had searched outside, in the pleasures of the world, in the wisdom of philosophy, in the praise of men, and yet the one he sought had been within all along, closer than breath, more intimate than thought. To awaken is to realize that what you seek is already seeking you, that the lover has been pursuing the beloved from the beginning. But love requires response. Love waits, but love also calls. Kierkegaard understood that faith is decision, not abstraction. To remain neutral before God is itself a rejection, for eternity demands the whole heart. One cannot cling half to the world and half to God, for love cannot be divided. The soul must leap out of the boat and onto the waters, out of calculation and into trust, out of fear and into the embrace of the infinite. And though the waters rage, the hand that sustains will not let go. Here the soul begins to taste what the mystics called union, not in full vision, but in foretaste. The prayer once filled with words becomes silent adoration. The longing once restless becomes still and radiant. In that silence, the soul knows itself known, loves itself loved, and rests in the gaze that has never looked away. Eckhart spoke of this as a breakthrough, the soul breaking through into God and God breaking through into the soul. It is not the destruction of the self, but its true awakening, the realization that to be is to be loved. From this union flows a new vision of the world. The soul no longer sees creation as a distraction, but as a sacrament. Every face becomes a mirror of the divine, every moment a spark of eternity, every act of love a participation in the life of God. Teresa of Avila could say she found God among the pots and pans, because the kitchen was no less holy than the chapel once her eyes were opened. To live in this awareness is to live transfigured, to walk in the world yet not be bound by it, to carry heaven as an inner fire wherever one goes. And still the longing deepens, for Dante, ascending through the celestial spheres, found that even the most exalted visions could not capture the final mystery, that the soul must be drawn beyond all comprehension into the direct vision of love itself. And when that vision dawns, every question dissolves, every wound is healed, every longing is fulfilled. Eternity is not far off. It presses against the veil of time even now. Every act of love tears the veil a little wider. Every surrender thins the wall between now and forever. To live awake is to live in two worlds at once, still walking the earth yet already standing in eternity. And when at last the veil is lifted entirely, the soul will realize that death was not an end but a passage, not a darkness but a dawn, not a loss but a homecoming. This is why no man is lost who seeks the face of God, for to seek is already to be on the path, to long is already to be in his embrace. Even stumbling steps are gathered into his mercy. Even faltering prayers rise like incense before his throne. The thief on the cross had nothing to offer but desire, and yet it was enough. Today you will be with me in paradise. So too with every soul who turns, however late, however broken, however small the offering. The face of God does not turn away. And in that vision lies the final transformation. The restless heart rests at last. The wandering pilgrim arrives. The exile comes home. The soul beholds not an abstract infinity but a face, the face of love, radiant with mercy, blazing with truth, tender with compassion. To see that face is to see oneself at last, for the soul is made in that image, and in seeing, it becomes what it beholds, luminous, eternal, free. The story of man is the story of God seeking his children. The story of the soul is the story of learning to respond. And though the road is long, though the nights are dark, though the battles within rage, the end is certain. For the one who began the work will complete it, and the restless heart will find its rest. Lift up your eyes, pilgrim. Do not despair at your weakness. Do not fear your failures. Do not believe the lie that you are lost. Every longing is proof that you are already being drawn. Every ache for eternity is the whisper of the eternal. The face you seek is already turned toward you. No man is lost who seeks the face of God. So walk on, even through shadows. Pray on, even in silence. Hope on, even in despair. For the face of God shines still, and the eyes that search for him will not be denied forever. Beyond this world's passing illusions lies the eternal real. Beyond the struggle lies the vision. Beyond the cross lies the crown. And when at last the soul beholds that vision, when time dissolves into eternity, when love is all in all, the restless journey will end in rest, and the pilgrim will finally whisper what the saints have always known. God alone suffices, and no man is lost who seeks his face.
No man is lost who seeks the face of God, for the very act of seeking is already a response to the call of eternity. And yet the journey does not end in seeking. The heart longs not only to search but to behold, not only to knock but to enter, not only to wander but to arrive. And the promise stands, seek and you shall find. Knock and the door shall be opened. Ask and it shall be given unto you. But finding God is not like finding an object hidden away in the world. It is not a discovery that leaves him confined, nor a possession that can be stored away. Finding God is being found. It is realizing that while we were searching, he had already arrived. While we were reaching, he had already embraced. While we were longing, he had already loved. To find God is to awaken to the reality that he was never absent, only unseen. This awakening is the true resurrection of the soul. It is not merely a change of thought, but a rebirth of being. The world appears transfigured. Suffering becomes luminous with hidden purpose. Death becomes transparent with eternal life, and every moment is heavy with the weight of glory. The smallest act of kindness reverberates into eternity. The faintest prayer joins the chorus of the saints. The breath itself becomes a sacrament of grace. Here, gratitude deepens into adoration. The soul ceases to ask for signs or proofs, for it no longer doubts the presence. It simply bows in wonder. Teresa of Avila once exclaimed, "God alone suffices." And the awakened soul knows this to be true. No possession, no achievement, no fleeting pleasure can rival the joy of abiding in Him. To dwell in divine love is to drink from the fountain that quenches all thirst, to rest in the embrace that dissolves all fear. But even this is not the end, for love always calls the beloved higher. The final union toward which all longing points is not yet seen in its fullness. In this life, we walk by faith, we glimpse through a veil, we taste but do not yet feast. The soul burns with a holy impatience, yearning for the moment when faith shall be sight, when the veil shall be torn away, when eternity shall burst forth in radiant clarity. This is the blessed hope, the vision of God, face to face, where every question falls silent, every wound is healed, every longing fulfilled. What then shall we say of death, the shadow that men fear? The awakened soul no longer trembles. Death is not the thief of meaning, but the gate of fulfillment. It does not extinguish the flame, but carries it into the blaze of eternity. Augustine confessed that his heart had been restless until it found its rest in God. Death, for the faithful, is nothing more than the final rest, the homecoming of the exile, the arrival of the pilgrim. For what is death but the last surrender, the last letting go, the final leap into the arms that have always been waiting? The saints understood this. They did not escape fear by denying it, but by walking through it with their eyes fixed on eternity. Dante's journey ended not in despair, but in vision, beholding the love that moves the sun and the stars. Eckhart spoke of the ground of the soul meeting the ground of God, an encounter where all distinctions dissolve into pure love. And Pascal, torn between the greatness and the misery of man, found his resolution in Christ crucified, in whom both human weakness and divine strength were reconciled. So too must we learn to see that our wounds are not barriers but openings, that our failures are not final but invitations, that our longings are not curses but signs of our true destiny. Every restless heart is proof that eternity has already planted its seed within us, and every tear shed in faith waters that seed until it blooms in glory. The end is not far, it is near. Eternity is not distant, it is pressing against the present moment. The face of God is not hidden beyond the stars, but shines already within the soul that dares to look. And when the day comes that we cross the threshold, we shall see not a stranger, but a familiar friend, not a judge eager to condemn, but a Father rushing to embrace, not a cold infinity, but a burning love. Lift up your heart, pilgrim. You are not abandoned. The night you endure is not endless. Dawn is already breaking. The silence you fear is not empty. It is filled with the breath of God. The weakness you despise is not failure. It is the very place His strength will dwell. The longing you carry is not shame. It is the compass pointing you home. No man is lost who seeks the face of God, and to seek Him is already to be found. To hunger is already to be fed. To thirst is already to drink. To knock is already to be at the door. The Eternal does not hide Himself to be cruel. He hides Himself to be sought, and in seeking, the soul is changed. The restless heart becomes radiant. The exile becomes a child of the kingdom. The wanderer becomes a beloved son or daughter, welcomed into the eternal embrace.